we're looking for. They don't mention autism in this whole monograph. This is really about outcome measurement. It says if you want to have a claim of a drug or a device and you have a new outcome measure, you better develop it along these lines or you're going to have a hard sell at the FDA. And what's good about it is it's on the money. They are really have offered a roadmap on how to build an outcome measure. So here's the conceptual problem for me. If it is the case that anxiety disorders are no different in children with anxiety in autism or typically developing children, then just measure anxiety, and if you're going to develop a medication or a treatment for it, it should be relevant to typically developing children, children with autism, and so forth. But if it's not the case, if it's not simply that this child is unlucky and has two conditions, we need to think a little differently about it. And this may be what I've called the complication model, which is that the presence of autism increases the risk of evolving a condition that we could label anxiety. And it's sort of like if you play football and you have a bad knee and you start walking funny and then suddenly you've got a hip problem. It's related. It's not an accident. And that's a sort of blended and amplification type of situation. And I more and more, that's the way I'm thinking about it. Convergent model, there are people that wonder, and I don't think we can dismiss it out of hand, that anxiety might be actually part of autism. And this is a comment going right back to Lee O'Connor that he used such terminology. What I can tell you, I don't have time to present the data. On measures of anxiety, we have children with autism in fairly large samples who are low on anxiety, some who are in the middle, and some are high. So I'm not really convinced about the bottom, but I don't think we should dismiss it. So practical problem. We have to disentangle anxiety from ASD. Social avoidance, for example, because some people with autism may not be that interested in interacting with other people, so they're avoidant. Is that the same thing as being anxious about interacting with others? Could it be that social avoidance over time makes a person not very good at social interactions, so then it becomes a socially anxious kind of a thing? Cognitive language delay. I was interested that in the wonderful talks we heard earlier, I didn't hear much about developmental disabilities like language delay, but I suspect, especially with the new frame in DSM-5, that language disorders will emerge as an important area. But even children who don't have cognitive delays may not have the best use of language. So getting the child to tell you about their internal experience may be difficult. It may be that there is some blending of anxiety in children with ASD. So, for example, I had one mother explain to me that her child is very insistent on routines at breakfast and various routines throughout the day. And I thought, yeah, I've heard that before. But the mom went on to say that it's not just that she is insistent on these things. She's always on the lookout for whether there's going to be some deviation in the routine. That's starting to sound a little bit more like anxiety to me. Blurry boundaries. This is true in typically developing children as well. Children with separation anxiety often have generalized anxiety. Children with generalized anxiety often have social anxiety. So that's true in typically developing children. Given on some of the issues we just talked about in children with ASD, those blurring boundaries are probably going to be even a bigger deal. I'll tell you my wish. My wish is that we are not going to focus on specific anxiety disorders in children with ASD, that we're going to focus on anxiety, and we come up with an outcome measure that is not 7 items of this and 4 items of that. No. So we have this wonderful NIMH grant, and we use the FDA monograph as a template. We started with 6 focus groups with parents. We asked the parents to tell us about what they thought were manifestations of anxiety. It's been said here a couple times, parents are the experts of their children. They told us a lot. We learned a lot from them. We have now taken those 600 pages of transcripts and we've pulled out items. More about that in a minute. We're now going to take those items and put them on the web, and hopefully we'll get 900 families to fill them out, and we'll start doing a factor analysis and the like. Once we're done with that, we're going to bring in about 90 to 100 children with face-to-face evaluations to look at that measure and also a revised interview measure that's been around for typically developing children with anxiety. Finally, we're going to try and take the children with high anxiety and compare them to children with low anxiety and look at biomarkers like heart rate variability. So what did the parents tell us? They told us many, many things, and I boiled this down really to one slide, perhaps unfairly. They told us that they noticed changes in their child's behavior in certain situations. I really appreciated their observation that they were talking about change in the child's behavior, and you can see what it says on the slide. We asked them to tell us about the behaviors, not just the triggers, and they told us things like requesting for reassurance. Now that's in typically developing children as well. Avoiding behaviors because of the situations where this distress was observed. And what we came to call child coping behaviors. These are the behaviors that the child resorted to when they encountered these triggering situations. For an outcome measure, the money is mostly in observable behaviors. I think you'd agree. So we took those 600 pages, and I'm only showing a few. You can read them. I won't read them out. Just to give you an example of how you go from testimony from the parents that was often, rambling, sometimes right on the money. Sometimes we had to boil it down. We had to boil it down to simple items that could be read off and scored on 0 to 3. This is just a few examples. I went to the middle of the pack of the 52 items and just made a slide out of it. We'll have altogether 71 items that we're going to ask parents to comment on a simple 0 to 3 scale. So put those on the web. We're hoping that we get a dimensional parent rated measure. We're hoping that it is in the neighborhood of 30 to 35 at best items. We're then going to do assessment of the children and look at in a more fine-grained way how this maps to other measures to establish reliability and validity. And then we're going to do this heart rate variability. The heart rate variability, we've now collected pilot data. We can measure this in children with autism. I think it's a very cool possibility. These are our collaborators at Emory. Karen Bears, who is a psychologist that moved from Yale down to Emory with me, and our good friends at Ohio State, and our good friends at CHOP in Philadelphia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry, and I'm sure